Tonight, American ground troops are only 100 miles from Baghdad, and what could be the most dangerous part of the war.
There may well be tough days ahead, but the forces on the field will achieve the objectives.
The Iraqis released a videotape today showing what appears to be dead American soldiers and POWs.
Under the Geneva Convention, it's illegal to do things with prisoners of war that are humiliating to those individuals. And the United States, of course, avoids showing photographs of prisoners of war.
And if there is somebody captured, and it looks like there may be, I expect those people to be treated humanely.
This was the U.S. military's first direct battle with the Republican Guard's tough Medina division. One Apache is downed, its two-man crew captured. Tonight, the Iraqis put the two pilots on television.
Today's televised speech and a later video showing Saddam with his powerful son Quzai, part of a media blitz to prove that Iraq's regime has not collapsed. He repeatedly said, victory is close. Believers will be victorious. The enemies are in real trouble right now. Hit them hard.
Only now, with war underway, will the White House divulge how much money it thinks the conflict will cost. Officials say the president, who huddled with his economic team today, will request just under $75 billion in emergency funding, most for the war and additional money for Homeland Security and other programs. This request appears to be based on the expectation of a short war, no more than 30 days.
We're in the midst of a sandstorm right now. If I ask, brown haze basically envelops us. The sandstorm has become so fierce that you can't see more than maybe 15, 20 feet in front of you. The sun doesn't set here for another hour to hour and a half, and yet you can't see 3 feet in front of you. It's actually much brighter out now than it was, say, 45 minutes to an hour ago.
There will be a day of reckoning for the Iraqi regime, and that day is drawing near.
These are the kinds of pictures the Pentagon had dreaded. A Baghdad neighborhood struck by bombs, 14 civilians killed.
I was out there with my crew for about an hour, and we looked at the wreckage, and we talked to local people. This is civilian area?
Total civilian.
The first emergency meals, 19,000 of them, ended up in the village of Safwan. Wherever there are cameras, Saddam Hussein is still the hero. Iraqis, not yet convinced he's lost control, worry they'll pay with their lives for speaking against him.
Off in the distance over there is that hospital. It's a hospital that, quite frankly, doesn't appear to have been used for a hospital for some time. Rather, it was being used by the Iraqi military as a headquarters.
Inside, Marines found a tank and 3,000 brand new chemical suits, stacked for easy distribution. Also, atropine injectors, which can be used as an antidote for nerve gas.
Are we to assume that this could last months and not weeks?
If I can... It's a matter of timetable, it's a matter of victory. And the Iraqi people have got to know that, see? They got to know that they will be liberated and Saddam Hussein will be removed no matter how long it takes.
I have no doubt that we're doing the right thing. I have no doubt that our cause is just. And I have no doubt that were we to walk away from this conflict at this time, we would be doing a huge disservice to future generations.
In the biggest single blast of the war, a 5,000-pound bunker buster bomb was dropped on Baghdad overnight, the first time the weapon has ever been used in combat. But this morning in Basra, Iraqi militia are reportedly shooting large numbers of civilians attempting to flee the city.
Unlike Saddam Hussein's regime, our nations and our people value human life. We want the Iraqi people to live in freedom so they can build a future where Iraq's leaders answer to the Iraqi people instead of killing the Iraqi people.
The coalition airstrikes on Baghdad continued for an 8th straight night tonight, with a huge blast hitting the Iraqi Information Ministry. After that explosion in downtown Baghdad, fire from Iraqi anti-aircraft batteries lit up the sky and smaller blasts were heard. Iraqis fired on other Iraqis in Basra today. CNN's Diana Muriel reports that Iraqi militia fired on hundreds of civilians with machine guns and mortars. The people were trying to cross a bridge to get to British troops waiting on the other side.
What do you need?
Today, there were people in desperate need. This 6-month-old baby was burned in a domestic fire 2 days ago. All that time, the parents had looked for a doctor. Now they'd found one. In the long term, the people here need more than the army can give. But today, they got something. Romilly Woods, ITV News in southern Iraq.
Despite the fact it had been hit by mortars just hours earlier. Shortly after dawn, a group of around 300 refugees emerged from behind the burning oil holes that marked the boundary of Basra towards this British-held bridge. Officers watched in horror as a barrage of mortars exploded around them, almost certainly launched from paramilitaries who still control the port.
Witnesses reported the information ministry was hit. And tonight, we're getting a report that U.S. commanders have ordered a 4 to 6 day pause in the march toward Baghdad.
And the bridge, it is damaged. And we have here in the building also damage. So we thought that the missiles hit inside the sea.
So the missile hit this bridge?
Yes, please.
Communication has just become a problem for him. This is one of 3 important sites bombed early today by the coalition. The buildings appear to have housed telephone exchanges and other transmission equipment. This place is at the foot of Saddam Tower, one of Baghdad's landmarks. Not for a week has Baghdad been subjected to such a violent assault. The explosions themselves were more powerful than before, bigger, louder bombs. They sent out what felt like earthquake aftershocks. This is Baghdad's main telecommunications center. Outwardly, there wasn't that much damage to see, but we believe it was hit by a so-called bunker buster. Following the bombardment, many telephone lines are now down. But some television broadcasts continue here. The Iraqi people will have seen and heard their information minister give an upbeat assessment. I asked him if he really believed they were winning the war.
It's a firm belief that we are winning this war and we will win the war. The final will be an Iraqi victory. This is for sure.
How can you really say that if the Americans are just 100 kilometers south of Baghdad?
Yeah, their lines is more than 500. We want them to make it longer. This will make it easy for us.
Despite the air raids, most ordinary Iraqis remain cheerful and friendly. This family live in poverty, less than 50 yards from a building bombed this morning. They were shaken but unscathed, and before we left, they invited us to join them for lunch.
Of the river. The others made it across to safety, although some casualties were taken. The British managed to recover one young woman who was injured in the crossfire and brought her to safety on the other side. Over the past few days, refugees had been trying to leave the city, but Fedayeen, according to British military sources, are patrolling that bridge and trying to prevent people from making it across.
None of this is helping America's already tattered image in the countries closest to this conflict. The Arab League, whose members include Iraq and Syria, is sceptical about Mr. Rumsfeld's claims. Back at Camp David for the weekend, the president predicts complete victory, but he'll hope that Mr. Rumsfeld's intervention solves problems rather than causing new ones.
But the Iraqi resistance here, in a very clever way, has decided that this is the vulnerable part of the American column.
It will be the largest single loss of Iraqi civilian life so far in this conflict. What's more, these pictures have been beamed around the Arab world, compounding the sense of anger in a region already opposed to this conflict. The image and perception will be of a war which is making victims out of those it is meant to liberate.
The Ministry of Defence is investigating reports they were victims of a so-called friendly fire incident. An American A-10 aircraft is reported to have opened fire on British vehicles near Basra. We should say, of course, the Americans are neither confirming nor denying that it was one of their missiles. And last time this happened, they said it could actually have been an Iraqi missile.
They did indeed, but
And of course that is possible because there are anti-aircraft missiles deployed in and around Baghdad. But when the air raids have been going on at night, we haven't seen any evidence of missiles being fired at aircraft, just gunfire. And the cratering was so enormous from that first missile that it would have been perhaps unlikely to be an anti-aircraft missile, which have quite small explosive charges.
When we were seeing pictures from Baghdad with Iraqi Omar a little earlier, there was a great deal of traffic on the streets, and it does look like people are still out and about.
Barely see anything.
Their defeat is certain. All that is unclear is the number of days or weeks it will take.
The path we are taking is not easy, and it may be long, yet we know our destination.
CENTCOM has already been on the record to say that we had information that this regime would seek to gain U.S. and U.K. uniforms in order to commit atrocities. And so if that's the report, if that's true, I'm not at all surprised by that.
They've switched the rules of engagement here. Basically, they're now saying that any soldier who's not wearing a chemical suit, which is what everyone here is wearing, is fair game if they're doing something threatening.
Within those 6 or 7 days, actually an enormous amount has already been achieved.
The outcome is assured. The regime will be removed. The only thing that remains unclear is precisely how long it will take.